Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 Podcast. I am Joel A. Erickson. I am joined by Nathan Brown. This is the First Impressions Podcast. This is also our first road podcast. If you are watching the video, you can see that I am currently in the Charlotte airport. Nathan is still in Pittsburgh. Why would that be true that one of us is in Charlotte and one of us is in Pittsburgh? It's because Nathan started on the beat late, so we didn't coordinate our flights because I didn't know that Nathan would be here yet. So I'm getting back home, so I get a little bit extra time before I fly to Germany next week. Nathan is in the hotel. He is driving back tomorrow. All kinds of travel chaos, but that doesn't matter to you guys. The Colts lose 27-20 today, and for the first time this season, they looked bad. Nathan.
They did. 5 sacks today for a group that had given up just 9 sacks total on the year. 6 turnovers for a group that had given up just 4 turnovers. 3 interceptions, matching Daniel Jones's total for the season today. It's kind of miraculous, really, when you think about it, that this team was a onside kick recovery and a Hail Mary away from having some semblance of a chance to win this game today. The final score certainly was a lot closer than it really felt for the majority of the game, but some credit to the Colts team for continuing to fight and not just throwing in the towel and giving up on this one. But this is definitely one that I imagine will be a little tough to swallow when they watch the game film tomorrow. Be really interested to talk to head coach Shane Steichen tomorrow afternoon for some stories that I'm sure we will write up as he and the players get a little bit more of a chance to dissect the game film and see where this one went wrong.
Yeah, it's the kind of game that you probably know is going to come in the NFL. If you look around the NFL today, the Packers lost to Carolina. They scored like 13 points. The Lions lost to J.J. McCarthy coming back in the Vikings, even though they're both of those teams are at home. The Colts were in a place that has been a terrible spot for this franchise over the course of the time. They still don't have a win here since 2008. I don't necessarily know that I put a ton of stock into that. It's not. They don't come here enough for it to be like Jacksonville, where it's all together. A lot of those losses are by teams that don't have any players left on this Colts team. But for whatever reason, in Pittsburgh, this has always been an issue for them, and they looked. This is the worst they've looked. The last 2 games I covered here, 2020, they had Will Holden and Chaz Green at tackle, and still nearly beat the Steelers before a late comeback by Roethlisberger. The year before that, Jacoby Brissett got off to a good start and then got hurt. Brian Hoyer threw a pick 6, and that whole season kind of derailed. But this one, they just weren't competitive from start to finish. Just way too many turnovers. I think we can jump right into the category since, as people know, I am in an airport, and you never know when I'll have to get on a plane. But this is the first time in a while we've had to do this. We start out with villain of the game. Nathan, who is the villain of the game for this game?
For the Colts, I think it was Alex Highsmith, defensive front 7 presence guy who came into today's game with 1.5 sacks, finished with, I've got the stats here, 2 sacks for 7 yards, 3 tackles for a loss, a quarterback hit, and a forced fumble. A major part of that front 7 group that just felt like it had Daniel Jones under pressure. Really a lot to kind of close that first half, and for the bulk of the second half, just Daniel Jones didn't have many moments to feel comfortable, to get his bearings, to find a read, and I think Alex Highsmith played a major role in that today.
Yep, one of the things about the way the Colts play the Steelers typically, or teams that have one superior rusher, in this case T.J. Watt, is that it's going to put pressure on the other side of the line, because basically they're going to slide all their protection towards T.J. Watt, and that leaves Bernhard Raimann one-on-one, and you expect him. I mean, you paid him to win those matchups, but he didn't win it today. A real struggle for Raimann today. And he tried to take this category away from the person who I'm going to give it to when I talked to him, by saying that, I've got to be better if I play better, Daniel Jones probably plays better. But I think like, we kind of have to go with Daniel Jones as a villain here. 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles. Shane Steichen said, two of the interceptions were, he said 2 of the interceptions were tipped, and one was when they were trying to chuck it late because they were down. The chuck it late when they're down piece, yes, one was definitely tipped. The other one, I watched it back again. It's just a bad decision. He just doesn't see Peyton Wilson dropping out. And then the 2 fumbles, I think that's the other thing that hasn't really happened. We haven't really seen it, though, because he hasn't been sacked that much. You just can't have 5 turnovers in a game. We've given him hero of the game a lot here, but even when the offensive line is collapsing around you, and this is the thing that if you're a Colts fan and you want to get worried, that people said was going to happen with Daniel Jones, is that when everything's not perfect around him, it's going to look bad, and it didn't look good today.
Great point. Unsung villain of the game. Who do you have for that?
He's unsung villain, I think. The middle of the field defense in coverage for the Colts. They did a pretty good job against the run today. The Steelers didn't really run the ball at all. But in the passing game, they kind of struggled. The yardage doesn't look like that. Rodgers didn't throw the ball very far down the field. He also got rid of the ball super, super fast. Like I think I saw somebody, Mina Kimes tweeted that in the first half, he was getting the ball out of his hands in 2.14 seconds, which is insanely quick. A lot of that is because they didn't make him hitch. He had outlets, especially over the middle. He had places to throw the ball, and they've got to get better at this as they go forward. Because Rodgers, well, he's still capable mentally. Is not the same quarterback that he used to be. There was one run where he thought he was going to get the pylon, and he didn't really get close. That kind of reminded us of that, but. They're going to play some quarterbacks and some passing attacks coming up here that are going to be able to take advantage of that in a way that wins a shootout, even if your team isn't turning the ball over as much as it did today.
Good point. So I didn't have him in my villain spot, so I had written down Daniel Jones in this spot, and for time reasons, I'll go with him here. I just feel like there were so many things that went wrong in this game. I don't know that you can, and I don't think you were necessarily putting it entirely on Daniel. And I'm curious to see. I haven't honestly been on social media too much to see exactly where all the blame is being placed. I know there are a lot of fans out there that feel like the Colts should have run the ball a lot more, which I know you smartly wrote in a piece that is a little bit short-sighted, and I'm sure there are folks out there too that really feel like this O-line let this team down. And honestly, if there are a lot of things that went wrong today, ultimately, as you mentioned, that it comes back and rests on Daniel Jones's shoulders. I don't think he was certainly responsible supremely for all 6 of those turnovers, but ultimately it comes back to him. And when you're leading a team on a comeback drive, you've just got to thread the window, say on that late interception for picking up yards, but also not something that's going to completely lose you all semblance of hope. That was a big one there, along with the one in the first half that was just kind of a dump off pass, probably just 5 yards or so down the field that he threw directly into the hands of a Steelers player. So that's who I had there.
You know what? We got to go with an honorable mention here because I can't figure out where else I'm going to put him.
Mm-hmm.
But Josh Downs was terrible as a punt returner.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the obvious play. There's the fumble off the chest, and it ends up turning into points. That really changed the game, along with T.J. Watt's strip sack. But also, I don't remember a punt that I thought he handled well. His decision-making was very, very confusing today. Sometimes trying to field it and it not going well, sometimes not trying to field it and not going well. Last year, he was the guy who was supposed to be reliable back there, which I think is why you go to him with Anthony Gould down. But, man.
The last one was really curious, where you choose you're in a late game situation, and he just chooses to let the ball bounce, and I think the Colts ended up taking over on their own 12-yard line. Of all the, I can't remember that play explicitly in my head, but that just seemed like a moment where you absolutely do not let the ball land and give the Steelers a chance to just pin you a couple yards further deep. Catch it and take a fair catch. That one in particular, I really didn't understand, and the one where he muffed it, just flat out didn't get out of the way. That was a major error. It didn't turn into any points ultimately, and the Colts were driving really, really well off of that defensive stand, but that just kind of started things off on the wrong foot after they had scored, and felt like things were starting to tip in the wrong direction after that one.
Yeah, I mean, they had 2 3-and-outs, right? Or close to it.
Yeah, the Packers has had 2 3-and-outs. The first one, obviously, they punted, leads to a really long Colts scoring drive, and then the second one was when he muffed the punt. At that point in the game, right before that ball hits him in the chest, it really feels like this game is going exactly how the Colts would want it to. They score on the first possession. They're getting the ball back, a chance to potentially go up 14-0. You couldn't have asked for a lot more early on in the game there, and that kind of felt like the momentum turned at that moment.
Let's get into some of the more positive categories.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you have for hero of the game?
Hero of the game. So we're talking about special teams there and the downside of it. I felt like Brian Mason, the Colts special teams coach there. I know this doesn't all rest on him, but the fact that you have a pair of 50-plus yard field goal makes there from their place kicker, that credit goes to that special teams unit. You had a fake punt that was successful off a play I imagine he drew up, even though that the decision to go for it probably comes from Shane Steichen. That was really outside of Josh Downs's questionable moves there. That was a unit that I felt like did fairly well today. They had a couple strong punts from Rigoberto Sanchez. A lot of issues on the offense and defense, and special teams wasn't perfect, but I felt like things that Coach Brian Mason could control, there were some positives to be seen there.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'm very interested to see what he says about some of these players.
Yes.
On Tuesday, he's quickly become my favorite coordinator because he just explains everything in a way that is easy for everybody to understand. It's going to be a very interesting Tuesday, just to hear what he thinks. I'm going to go here with. It's tough. I want to go. I'm deciding between 2 receivers. And I can't decide if I should go Michael Pittman Jr. or Alec Pierce. They ended up with exactly the same amount of yards. I think I lean towards Pierce, though, because Pierce had 3 catches for 64 yards before things got really, really bad. He started out, it's maybe my finest moment on First and Joel on TV. They asked who I thought would have a big game. I said Alec Pierce, and they caught like the first 3 passes of the game. But it did seem like he was taking advantage of the situation they had with their corners. And, it didn't work out that way, but it's just, to me, it's impressive that he's become the kind of player that you can start the game with like that. And and it can be 3 catches and not just 1.
Mm-hmm. Good one. Unsung hero of the game. I actually had the other wide receiver you mentioned there, Michael Pittman Jr. Caught some really big balls over the middle today. Facing some big hits. There was even one there toward the end of the game that looked like it had him a little bit unsettled, but we asked head coach Shane Steichen after the game. Pittman was okay, and he said that he was just fine. Again, as you mentioned, went for 115 yards. Both Pittman and Alec Pierce were the Colts' first 100-plus yard receivers on the season. Pretty ironic that you get 2 of those after none in the first 8 weeks, and the fact that it came in a game where, frankly, the offense didn't do a whole lot, or just didn't do enough and was uncharacteristically sloppy. Interesting that both of those come there. I guess some of that comes with the fact that they had a lot of garbage time yardage there down down to the end of the game, which they haven't had a lot of. They've had a couple fourth quarters here recently where the starters have played little, if at all. So some of that comes with that a little bit. I think Daniel Jones had more than 340 yards passing today. I don't know if that is his season high, but it's got to be pretty close if it's not. So, those guys did what you would ask from a 1-2 receiving tandem, and props on them for a pair of strong games.
Have we made it to number of the day? Are we officially at?
I think we're at number of the day. Yes,
we are at number of the day. Mine's 9. Mine's 9. It's the longest carry for Jonathan Taylor. This will come up in a later category. I'll get into this a little bit more, but for me, it's just. I would say he probably. I haven't looked. He probably has. I feel like he has to lead the league in explosive runs, and by what I mean by that is a run of 10 or more. That's how the NFL defines it. He might lead them in the truly explosive runs with 80 or 40 or whatever. I don't know, I really think with as much as you know why they threw the ball, it's remarkable that the Steelers were able to take him so completely out of it in terms of he just wasn't ripping off chunks the way you used to see him rip them off.
No, there were moments in the game where we were remarking in the press box at what he was having to fight through just to get 5 or 6 yards. We're used to seeing him pick up 4, 5, 6 yards with regularity. That's how he entered this game with, I think, an average of 5.9 yards per carry. Obviously, big explosive runs like the 80-yarder last weekend against the Titans for a touchdown certainly helped with something like that. But he had been a back this season that if the ball was in his hands, you could pretty much trust that minimum he was getting 4, 5, 6 yards. And we saw very, very little of that, as the stat line tells. My number for the day is 19. That is the total number of times that the Indianapolis Colts have played in Pittsburgh, including the time when they were the Baltimore Colts. That number, not necessarily the most important one, but I think you mentioned earlier in the pod, the Colts have not won in Pittsburgh since 2008, and they've only won as a franchise in Pittsburgh 2 times in franchise history, which is kind of astounding to me when you think of the hundreds and probably thousands of players that have been on this roster dating back to 1957 until 2025. That other win, as I scan through things on the from games on the road in Pittsburgh, came in. Came back in 1968, obviously when this team was the Baltimore Colts. Don't really know what to make of that. As we mentioned, so many different iterations of both of these teams and head coaches and what have you, but this is not an easy place to come and play. This is a team in Pittsburgh as a franchise that just historically has been really strong. And it's maybe not all that surprising that this would be a tough place for any team to come and win with any sort of regularity. But I feel like a bit of an oddity that it has been quite as tough for the Indianapolis or Baltimore Colts as a whole to come up with victories here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's a good lead into our next category. We are at game day observation. Do you have a game day observation? This was your first time in Pittsburgh, I believe.
I do, and I guess it's kind of related to that home crowd atmosphere, if you will. There was a moment. It was on the Steelers' second drive of the day. They faced 3rd and 7, and Aaron Rodgers got sacked. And it was kind of in that time period where, as I was talking earlier, this game felt like it was playing out exactly how the Colts would want to. And as the offense trotted off the field and the punt team came on, you started to hear a smattering of boos from the home Pittsburgh crowd. It felt like a little early until you think of the fact that this team had lost 2 straight. They started 4-1. Lost their last 2 games, and certainly at that moment early on, admittedly in the first quarter, this felt like this was turning into a 3rd straight loss, and one that could come quite handily at the hand of the Colts. And of course, moments later is when the punt bounces off of Josh Downs' chest and things really seem to turn. But was like that moment where Mike Tomlin and his team is already getting booed, probably 6 or 7 minutes into this game, down 7-0, stood out to me. Just the different way that this game seemingly turned within 60 seconds after those boos began to ring out in a game that they won somewhat handedly, despite what the score looks like, and in dominating and curtailing the top offense in the league.
My game day observation is something that happened before the game. It's one of the only tweets I had, because today we debuted Ask Joel. Some mixed reviews on that. We need more questions from readers for it to work. We're going to keep trying. We're going to see what happens, but we need more of you to ask questions during the game. I promise I'm there to answer. Nathan knows, because Nathan has to do all the stuff I used to do anyway. But the one tweet I had before the game was Carly Gordon signing autographs, which a lot of people liked. I'm not going to get into what some of the people on Twitter said. I would suggest just stay away from certain parts of the internet.
I think that's a wise suggestion.
But the more interesting thing is that, like, I was down there when she walked out, and it's not like she walked over there and just started signing people's stuff. Like, people were yelling for her. She's kind of a star, and obviously she's visible because she's on the sideline. You probably see her more than any other owner. The Colts are winning, so that probably helps. But it was just interesting. Like, she was there for a while signing autographs for all those fans, and they all wanted the autograph. I don't know that people in Pittsburgh knew who she was, because a couple of the workers on the sidelines asked me who was signing autographs. But Colts fans know. And it's just interesting to see that she's kind of. It feels this way online too, that she's kind of taken over this like star status this quickly in her tenure.
I'm gonna wager a guess that there are probably no other NFL owners that had anyone dressing up like them as Halloween. So I think you're spot on with that. It was really interesting to see that pregame.
Not unless some Cowboys fan dressed as Jerry Jones
fair
or something.
There's probably some of that. That's a good point.
There was probably some hate dressing up, but not the
That's true.
This brings us to 3 football things that give us joy. We'll ping pong this back and forth since you're on top of these.
Sure.
My number one's obvious. Everybody knows I love special teams. Rodney Thomas, fake punt. Fake punts don't happen in the NFL. They just don't. I think we asked. I can't remember if we asked about fake punts or fake field goals or whatever. But Brian Mason was just saying it's really hard to do this in the NFL because of the special teams coaching is so much better. Well, they pulled it off, and they pulled it off deep in their own territory. Just really, really gutsy.
Mine relates to that. The Colts were 5 for 5 on 4th down conversions today. I believe 3 of those even came in Colts territory. One of them is what they scored their first touchdown off of, that QB sneak there with Daniel Jones. I just really enjoy seeing aggressive football. Shane Steichen, it's no surprise to see Shane Steichen going for, big plays like that early and often, but to have 5, I think they had a couple on the first drive that, the best one was quite easily the fake punt there, the sneak with the direct snap to Rodney Thomas. But I know the Steelers were one, and there may have been a couple more teams that had not gone for 5 4th downs through their first 7 or 8 games of the season. Now the Steelers, that aggressiveness from the Colts, interestingly enough, and probably just the idea that they were playing the Colts in general, and points are so incredibly important to get whenever you have an opportunity to snag them or to extend drives. Mike Tomlin went for 2, I believe, 4th downs today. Again, as I mentioned, he'd only gone for 4 throughout this whole season. I think the Steelers were 1 for 2. Those are just the type of high pressure moment, particularly early in a game, that you just don't see often when you're trading punts back and forth. If you've got some teams committing 3 and outs, I love to see those. Love to see some high action in moments that aren't a big run down the field or a big pass or a scoring play, and those 4th down conversions or attempts certainly bring those.
Yeah, number two football thing that gave me joy, Latu's first sack, which I think his 2.5 sacks kind of get lost in the wash here because of the loss. But the first one that they got, they lined up basically Tommy Adebawore as the only down lineman in the middle of the line. Kwity Paye was kind of offset in a two-point stance. But they were on like the other side A gap and over the head of the guard. And then they took DeForest Buckner and Latu and moved them all the way out to, I think, head up on the tackle, and then Latu essentially in D or in the wide spot. And I like whenever you get both of your best rushers and you stick them in one spot and say, pick your poison, figure out a way to get to them. They didn't, and Latu got a sack.
Good one. I enjoyed seeing Jalen Jones back in the field today. You know, he had some ups and downs. You talked to him after the game, and he spoke a little bit about that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that he got, where he was admittedly going over to try and defend his own teammate there, Kenny Moore, who'd been taken to the ground by DK Metcalf, and Jalen just kind of let things get a little bit too out of hand. And as we hear a lot of coaches talk about in this league, it's oftentimes not the first guy that gets penalized for something. It's the second when you respond, and maybe the refs aren't initially looking, but they start to realize that something's going on, and they only see Jones and what he did there. So that wasn't great. But he also had a great pass breakup in the end zone to an attempted pass to DK Metcalf. I think Metcalf only caught 2 passes today for 6 yards. Need to go back and watch a little bit more of the game to get a sense of just how often Jalen was on DK in his first game back, and first game starting on defense since he went out with his hamstring injury in week 1 in the special teams play against the Dolphins. But it was just great to see him back on the field, and great for the Colts to start to get one of those key members of the defense back. I know they would love to have Tarvarius Ward back here, and hopefully he has an opportunity to get back sometime after the bye week. We'll see as he continues to sit on IR, but I know that was big in some ways for this Colts team, and it was a secondary that ultimately gave up just over 200 yards passing. That was not a way that the Colts, I felt like, lost this game. There were certainly some moments where the Packers were kind of able to dink and dunk their way down the field, but they were also given the defense was given some really short field positions to have to try and defend. And this is not the best defense in the league, as we've talked about ad nauseum over the last couple of weeks. But the defense did not lose them this game today, and I think Jalen Jones being back had to be a little bit of a part of that.
My third one, and I admit I feel a little bit guilty because you were the one who first said something about this in the press box, but I think longtime listeners of the podcast know that I was a defensive football player in my day, and anytime an offensive player hurdles somebody and it goes terribly for them, it brings me joy. Roman Wilson for the Steelers had the ball, was trying to hurdle somebody. Kenny Moore made the ball pop out. I saw one of our listeners, one of my Twitter followers, called it the Rosencopter for Josh Rosen getting spun around and pinwheeling. Yeah, give me all the Rosencopters. I like it when hurdling goes bad. I think I've used this before, actually, like a couple of years ago. Shaquille Leonard was really, really good when people hurdled at making them pay for it. And it always tickles me. Even in a game the Colts are getting blown out in.
I'm trying to remember, and I'm sure you will. Maybe this is just my tired brain forgetting it, but I'm trying to remember what the impetus of that was initially. There was a moment in the game where someone hurdled someone, and maybe it went fine, but it felt like it was absolutely unnecessary. Do you have recollection?
It was Amir Abdullah, and it was right in the middle of all the turnovers. And you were like, "Don't do that! You're going to turn the ball over again."
That sounds about right.
And Abdullah held on to the ball, but Roman Wilson did not.
No, and I mean, that was a moment again. I think if memory serves me right, that might have, that was either the possession that led to another Colts interception, or it was one where they ultimately scored off. But like, that was a time in the game where you just should not be making, risky moves there. If you are the Steelers, you've got this game all but wrapped up. You kind of just need to grind and get to the final whistle. And that was, had a couple different things gone the Colts way, that could have been a moment that we look back on with a lot more, as being a lot more pivotal in this game when you look at the fact that the Colts only ended up losing by 7. My last one there. This is maybe just a little bit cheesy, but second game on the beat, being in Pittsburgh, kind of like a little bit overcast day, chilly in the morning. This just felt like a football day. It wasn't, a blustery, super duper cold day that kind of chilled you to the bone. Just being out on the field to start this, in pregame, as we taped a video and just kind of took in the scene. This just felt like a day that football is meant to be played on. My first road game, first outdoor game on the beat, personally, just to kind of enjoy the experience and the atmosphere, and look forward to more of these later on in the year.
A gorgeous November day. Again, longtime listeners of the podcast know I prefer outdoor football, much to most Colts fans' chagrin. But just a great day. My phone says I board in 18 minutes.
All right.
So we have 4 more categories to go. Here we go. We haven't done this one in a while either. It's too much blame, too little blame. Nathan, who's getting too much blame for today's loss?
We kind of have touched on it earlier. Colts not rushing the ball more. As we mentioned earlier, I think Jonathan Taylor finished with 45 rushing yards on 14 rushes. I think you could maybe there's a little bit of an argument that the Colts maybe try this a little bit more earlier on in the game before it got too much out of hand. But in the moments that they did rush the ball in the first half, he just wasn't getting much of anything. As he was having to really battle and struggle for 5 or 6 yard pickups. You mentioned and made a great point in your story that you've touched on with this, that getting the run game going and the run game kind of being the impetus for the Colts building leads has just not really been how this team has functioned this year. They have thrived off of jumping on teams early in the pass game, and then you ride Jonathan Taylor in the second half. That's where he sprung that 80-yard run for a touchdown last week against the Titans. He's got, I know he's mentioned to us a couple times that we've spoken to him recently. He's got incredible fitness where it kind of seems like he almost peaks in the second half in a way as defenses are getting a little bit winded, and maybe those breaking loose of a tackle gets a little bit easier and he's still rumbling along. It just becomes even tougher to wrap up and take to the ground. I don't know that when when you find yourself down 10 coming out of the locker room to start the second half, that going to run the ball when it just hasn't really worked in the first half is where you should be going. We heard a lot of that after the game, and I can understand where folks are coming from. Jonathan Taylor has felt like the driving force for this offense in lots of ways. He's the guy that's in the MVP conversation the most. He's a guy that we've written about a lot, me included, over the last couple of weeks since I've been on the beat. But I just don't think the Colts lost this game because they didn't attempt to run the ball more. I think it was fairly clear early on that the Steelers had figured something out in their run game defense as well as their pass game, that this was just a little bit tougher unit than maybe the Colts, and certainly I think I was expecting them to be, and will be interesting to talk to Shane Steichen tomorrow as he gets a chance to watch the film and get a better sense of what went wrong there or what the Steelers did do so well. But I just don't think that when you're ranking reasons why the Colts lost this game today, that one ranks very high.
Too much blame for me is going to go to the pass rush. Rodgers getting the ball out in almost 2.1 seconds is really, really fast. They did end up with 3 sacks. They only had 4 quarterback hits, but it just feels like we always default to that. I think it's because on TV it's what you see. You don't see the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there were too many easy answers for Rodgers in the passing game today. He was able to get the ball out of his hands too fast. The running thing is it's also too much credit because Mike Tomlin acted like that was like the big deal. Like we stopped Jonathan Taylor and then they couldn't throw intermediate off of that. And it's what you just said. Like that's not how they operate. They usually throw and then run. So Yeah, I just thought that was interesting that's how it worked out for them, but I don't really think that's necessarily the way I'd approach it from a tendency standpoint. Too too little blame. Who's getting too little blame for today's game?
I'm gonna go with the offensive line here. I think, as we've touched on here, I think it's really easy to gravitate to single people. Jonathan Taylor. You look at the stat line, and he has the stat line that I referenced earlier: 14 rushes for 45 yards. Daniel Jones credited with 5 turnovers, and I just think a lot of what we saw that didn't go right, or actually legitimately went wrong, was just the offensive line just kind of getting eaten up a little bit. There's certainly some blame to go to Daniel Jones there on those turnovers. But I mean, the one in particular that I rewatched with the strip sack from TJ Watt, he just gets right around Braden Smith without really not a whole lot of effort, but just really fairly easily. That was just kind of one move, swings around the outside, and he's right in Daniel Jones's, right at his feet, takes one swipe at the ball and immediately puts that on the ground and then jumps on it. I talked to Braden after the game, and on that one play in particular, felt like he could have, just pushed a little bit more or gotten TJ just a little bit wider. And then maybe that's another half second or second, or maybe Daniel sees him a little bit better and realizes that all of this is happening. I just think as a whole, we'll be interested to see what the lessons are taken from this. I just think you can boil a lot of this down to that Steelers front seven, just kind of manhandling that group there. It was why the rushing lanes weren't nearly as wide, and why it was so hard for Jonathan Taylor to even pick up 4 or 5 yards, and why Daniel Jones in part had so little time, and why he was under duress so often today that started to spark that run of turnovers that they had in the middle of the game.
My too little blame goes to Shane Steichen, but not for the reason everybody thinks. Everyone thinks I'm going to say because he didn't run the ball enough because of his play calling. I actually think it was more like I'm just not used to seeing him. I felt like they were a little bit surprised by the Steelers today.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they were a little bit surprised by them, especially early in the game, cutting underneath routes, that kind of thing. I just don't think it was their best game plan. I don't think that he's known for kind of picking apart the Steelers. I wonder if the Steelers knew that and went away from their tendencies some. And kind of went way away from their tendencies in an effort to not have that happen. But I just kind of think that, for a guy who's had exquisite plans all year, it just wasn't maybe the best game plan. Not from a run pass, blah, blah, blah. More from a just not being able to read them quite the way he has in the past. That brings us to our last 2 categories. Got 10 minutes to do them, looks like. One to throw away. What's one to throw away? One thing that people are talking about now, we're not going to be talking about with the rest of the season.
I think it's really easy to, maybe look at this game and focus so much on the offense and what went wrong there. And maybe you forget, or maybe, there are folks that feel like the defense largely did what it needed to do there. And we kind of forget about the fact that this is a unit that we've been talking about that we feel like still needs some help there on the trade deadline here. And so my one to throw away is just anyone out there who might think, maybe this defense is okay as it is. I still think that this is a group that in the next 48 hours needs to add not necessarily a major trade piece, but I think there needs to be some sort of a shuffle there. I think if ever there was a moment to get aggressive or to make a move midseason, I think this is it. And so I don't think the Colts can lose sight of that. Yes, they did give up 27 points, and so maybe there are not many folks that are out there thinking that, but there were a lot of short fields today. I certainly don't think this defense is the reason that this Colts team lost this game, but that still needs to be the central focus over the next 40 hours, and be interested to see what they do here with Chris Ballard and company.
Yeah, my one to throw away, and this is risky because there's a way you can look at this game. I think the talking heads are probably going to do this, where you say that Daniel Jones is going to look like this the rest of the season. Um, I don't think so. I think this is more of a, like, you see this happen to teams. It just hadn't happened to the Colts yet. And right now I'm taking the 8 games we've seen over the one game that went bad. And maybe I'll regret that. Maybe it'll end up looking like some of the AFC South teams that have gotten out to big leads and then collapsed over the last couple of years. But I just don't think those first 8 games, all the underlying numbers, everything, it didn't really indicate that there was going to be a big crash coming. And so I expect regression, or not regression, but them to revert to what they've been previously in the season, more so than anything else.
It's a good one. One to go on our last category. What did you have for that one there?
Well, it's going to be a plane here in a little bit. It's, it's going to be a plane for me here in a little bit. My my one to go on is just that you do, like, as good as Daniel Jones has been under pressure, like, you still, like, this line still has to drive the boat in terms of protecting him and everything like that. I was thinking this while I was writing my Daniel Jones piece and thinking about what people are going to be saying on the talk shows. And the whole thing with Daniel Jones is like, well, if he gets pressured, he's not going to play well. No quarterback plays well if they get pressured a lot. That's true. Like, that's true of everyone. I think that goes all the way back to, like, Brady. Now he's played pretty well under pressure this season, but if you start having it like it was today, where we felt like he's, trying to let fly early or falling away or whatever all the time, you're just not going to be successful like that. And so this offensive line has to play up to its reputation for them to continue to do this. And I know people don't think about the offensive line all the time. They don't like to. You like to talk about the coach, the quarterback, especially like to talk about play calling. None of it works if they don't block.
Really stood out to me, my one to go on. Again, I know this can be a little cliche, but this locker room that we saw after the game, I don't know that I would call it upbeat by any stretch of imagination, but when you talk to players in there, I spoke to Jonathan Taylor, Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, Zaire Franklin, Josh Downs. This is a group large in part that feels like there can be lessons to be taken from this. I don't want to say that this Colts team was happy that they lost or that they wanted to lose, but this, having just been around this group for a couple of weeks, this, seems to me like a group that can respond to this in a positive way and learn from it and actually figure out with the coaching staff what went wrong and use it, even though it doesn't say so in the loss column, as a positive in the long run. I think I can't remember which player said it, but I know there was one, if not a couple players, that said ultimately you're almost certainly not going to go 17-0. They weren't going to anyways because they had already lost to the Rams, but very few teams, even get through the season with one loss. So it's going to come at some point. And I think there was maybe a sentiment of, there was a lot to take from this one. This was one where, yes, they made some mistakes, but they also got really worked in the trenches, particularly with the offensive line, and there was a lot of dinking and dunking that the Steelers were able to do to pick their way down the field even on some short fields that they did get. So I think this is a group that can learn from this, can over the next 48 hours, pull a lot of lessons and a lot of things that they need to work on, whether it's technique wise or game plan wise. And I do think that this can be a positive that this team can take. That second loss was probably going to come at some point in the season, and there's probably a third, maybe a fourth, what have you, that are going to come as they play what I think was, before today's game, the fourth toughest schedule the rest of the year. So I think if you're going to lose, I don't know that you would say that you want to lose with 5 sacks and 6 turnovers. And maybe you would want to feel like it was just a little bit closer, even though they did only lose by 7 points. But seems to me that this is a unit, and it starts with Coach Shane Steichen, that can take some positives from this and learn and ultimately be better suited for the playoffs come January.
Yeah, I think this is more of a veteran group than people realize, and it's a group that even with some of the younger guys has seen a lot of stuff. I wanted to swear there, but I didn't. It's a group that, like, even a guy like Alec Pierce, who's not that old, he hasn't signed his second contract yet. He's been through some stuff, and so it's more of a veteran group. I'm going to let you finish off. I have to go. My phone now says boarding shortly, so I will go get out of my plane so I get back to Indianapolis. Yeah, take them home, Nathan.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that will do it today for the Colts Cover-2 Podcast Instant Reactions. Thanks to all of you who listened or watched us on YouTube or on the website. Please continue to do so. Like and subscribe on our various platforms, YouTube in particular. Big one that we are trying to grow. So appreciate those of you who already like, subscribe, or follow us there. I have already written, I think, 3 stories. Joel has written 3, and we will have a lot more for you. If you are listening to this Monday morning, they are probably already posted on indystar.com. We will get a chance to talk to Colts head coach Shane Steichen on Monday afternoon, and I know that there will be a couple stories to write from that, and there will be a couple more to write on Tuesday as we talk to the offensive, defensive, and special teams coordinators, as this team kind of puts a bow on what took place today at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh before they focused their sights on playing the Atlanta Falcons in Berlin, Germany next Sunday morning here, Eastern time. Joel will be going there to Atlanta. Before we get there, we will have another podcast this week where we start looking ahead to that Atlanta matchup and maybe tie up any loose ends from things that we learned from talking to coaches and players about this loss here in Pittsburgh, 27-20 to the Steelers. For Any Star, I'm Nathan Brown. That was Joel Erickson, my co-host and co-worker. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Colts Cover-2 Podcast, and we will catch you next time.